Hey guys, welcome into the Keepers Fantasy Football Show. I'm the host, Paige DeMacos, here with Chris Schubert, and we're getting ready for Week 5 in the NFL. Lots of things going on around the NFL, but mostly we're talking bye weeks and injuries, because this is a week, the first week for fantasy football, where you have to deal with bye weeks.
We finally have one.
Yeah, we finally have one. So this means that you're going to get tested a little bit, Chris.
Yeah,
so
well, that's not good for me then.
It's not good for you.
No, it's not good.
Okay, so tell us about your personal situation, because I'd love to hear about why Chris is in a
My fantasy teams are not doing well.
Okay.
I mean, I got a team that has Antonio Brown and Leonard Fournette and Devonta Freeman, and I'm getting outscored by like 50 points every week.
There's something wrong.
Something is happening. The depth is not there. In our league, for our podcast league, we're doing pretty well.
That's what I'm talking about.
We're 2-2. We're 500.
Okay.
We started the year like, I think, 0-2, so we've battled back pretty well in that league. So that I'm excited about. So, but other than that, depth is an issue for me here in Week 5.
The common theme here to understand is that the league that Chris has me involved in, he's doing better in. So that's what we've learned, class. That's what we've learned in this lesson of fantasy football. But Chris, when you're on a bye week, what are some of the tips you have for people? Because I think going into a draft, you have to really look into some of these things. Because I know that I got a couple of guys, I think Scott, I'll give him a little shout out, Scott on Twitter, he sent me in a lineup where I think over half of his guys are on a bye week this week. So this is something you need to pay attention to when you're drafting, because if you have guys, for instance, if you have a bunch of guys that are all on the same team, they're obviously all out on the same week. So you got to be careful with that, because you're going to pretty much forego a week in the middle of the week in the middle of the year, where you can't do that if you don't pay attention to that while you're drafting.
This is where your pre-draft work comes into handy. You should, when you're sitting there at the draft, when you draft somebody, note when their bye week is, to make sure that when you're taking a backup quarterback, they don't have the same bye week to put yourself in this weird situation. If you did enough prep work beforehand, if you paid attention and tried to line up the bye weeks, you shouldn't find yourself in too many bad situations. But obviously bad situations can come up because of injury, because of underperformance, and that is where we are come in and we tell you what to do, and we try to give you the best insight that we can. But you got to do the pre-draft homework.
Yes.
If you don't, you are going to set yourself up to fail, because there are not going to be a whole lot of good options left out there when you have to make these tough decisions.
So, Chris, we're looking at these bye weeks. We're looking at what's going on with injuries. And the best part about what this show is on Thursday is that we have a very special guest every week. We have Dr. Salim Parekh, who is unbelievable. He gives us an injury update every week, and this week especially, we've got a ton of injuries. There are a ton of injuries, especially to big players. I think of Derek Carr, Marcus Mariota, some big-name quarterbacks, some guys that you're really, really worried about if you have those guys. So let's listen to what Dr. Parekh has to say about some of these injuries and what you should do for your fantasy team.
Hi, I'm Dr. Salim Parekh, the Fantasy Doctor with thefantasydoctors.com, and this is the Injury Blitz, where we go through in a quick, rapid-fire major injuries of the NFL, Week 4. We're going to start off with the top, Delvin Cook. Delvin Cook ruptured his ACL, which is a major stabilizing ligament of the knee. That is an isolated injury for him, so 9 to 11 months for him to return to play. He will have surgery for that reconstruction. Chris Carson had a knee and shin bone fracture, maybe even including the ankle. These are two big fractures in the ankle, or that in that lower limb. That is going to be about a 6 to 8 months return to play. He should be fine for training camp, but is done for this season. Michael Crabtree has a lung contusion where he got hit right in the chest. That's a bigger problem, because when the lungs are bruised, it can really become painful and bothersome, especially when you're exerting yourself and trying to take deep breaths. So he's going to be a game time decision, but could miss another week. Marcus Mariota, hamstring injury. And we know the hamstrings are something that can become a recurrent issue, especially for a quarterback who's a running type quarterback and is planting and really twisting and using a lot of force through the hamstrings. So this will be a game time decision, but don't be surprised if he misses a week. Jerick McKinnon, ankle sprain. This happened in the fourth quarter, should not miss any time and should be fine. Derek Carr, bigger issue. Got a helmet to the back. He fractured or broke his spinous process. If you look at the back, this is what the spinal column looks like. The spinous process are these little areas here that are shooting out off of the body of the bone. This is more of a pain issue than it is a stability issue. So he could miss up to 2 weeks. I don't think it'll be up to 4, but it could be up to 2. If he does play, it's, again, just a pain issue versus a stability issue. So should not be a big deal for him. Ty Montgomery, multiple rib fractures. Now, here's the deal. There's been lots of controversy. He may be available for the Cowboys game this weekend, but the problem is with multiple fractures, it's very painful. And usually it's a 2-week to 4-week timeline for those fractures to stabilize enough to withstand a blow. So even if he plays, I don't imagine he'll be very effective, because it just takes one hit, one landing on the turf where it really hits those ribs, and it becomes very painful, and he's out of the game. Devontae Adams, scary hit, but it turns out just to be a concussion. He's in the concussion protocol. And once he clears, he'll be good to play. The question is when he clears, and there's no way to determine that. Odell Beckham Jr., finger dislocation and tweaking of the ankle, both of which will not hold him back this week. So you can buddy tape those fingers and be able to play and catch effectively. And the ankle looks like just a tweak, so I don't think this is going to be an issue at all. Julio Jones has a hip flexor strain. These are the muscles that help pull your hip forward. Sounds like it's a very mild type based on the MRI, so he should be good to go this week. Mohamed Sanu has a hamstring injury, and both for these Atlanta Falcons players, obviously they have the bye, so it's really in 2 weeks for week 6. Mohamed Sanu, 2 to 4 weeks for him to return to play after his hamstring, so don't be surprised if he plays in 2 weeks after the bye. We've got a couple of other key injuries to look at. Jordan Matthews has a tear of a ligament in the thumb. Now, if you look at the thumb, there are 2 ligaments that stabilize as part of your thumb. If you tear, especially the inner one, you cannot catch a ball effectively. That thumb just kind of pops away and open. So he had surgery to stabilize those ligaments. With advances in medical technology, it is now about a 4-week return to play, maybe up to 6 weeks, but I anticipate him to be back at the end of October, early November. We have the recurrent injuries with Sam Bradford. He has a bone bruise in the knee. This is week 3 of his recovery. It is possible for him to play if his pain is quieted down enough. It is good news that as of today, he has not been ruled out for week 5, so it is possible that he may play this weekend. If he does play, look for his effectiveness to be kind of minimum, because he's been out and the timing may be off for him. So if he plays, minimal effectiveness, but it is possible it'll be a game time decision, most likely for him to play. I believe we have capped it. A couple of other things. I know these aren't fantasy relevant, but Reese Odombo, Seattle's tackle, had a helmet to the chest, and he bruised his heart. Now, this can be a very concerning issue. If there's bleeding associated with the heart bruise, then he could be out 4 to 6 weeks. If it's just a bruise and there's no bleeding out of the heart, you're looking at about a 2-week return to play for him. So we'll see how this goes. And finally, Andrew Luck. We are hearing that he will be throwing at some point this week. Now, he will not be playing immediately. He's going to need to get that shoulder stronger and get the velocity and the timing down. So I'm looking at late October, early November for him to return to play. I'm Dr. Parekh, the Fantasy Doctor. This is the Injury Blitz. Be sure to check out our Fantasy Doctor analytics score at the Fantasy Doctors. There is also our Fantasy Doctor value score, which looks at the value of each of these key position players as it relates to their value for each week's game. And the last feature we have on the Fantasy Doctor website is a head-to-head comparison for each week, each game. We look at the head-to-head fantasy implications using the FDX scores for the key position players. Until next week, Dr. Parekh, this is the Injury Blitz.
Thanks to Dr. Parekh, who joins us every week to give us updated injury analysis. It's safe to say that he is much smarter than both Chris and I. He's a professional. He's an actual doctor with an MD at the end of his name, and he's a pretty smart guy. And you can find him on Twitter. You saw that all throughout the video, and you can also go to thefantasydoctors.com and see all the great stuff that they're doing, a part of FanRag Sports Network, which is awesome. We love having them around and getting their analysis. Now, Chris, we're going to get into some start and sit. I got fired today. You got fired? I got fired today for some of these starts and sits. Yep, I'm calling my shot already. I got fired today. Okay, we're going to kick things off here with the hometown quarterback, and that is we're located in Phoenix, Arizona. That's Carson Palmer. Matchup comparison here.
See, this picture is very invalid. There needs to be like 6 offensive linemen just laid around while the defense swarms around Carson Palmer. That's a better indicator of Carson Palmer's season.
They're playing Philadelphia.
They are playing Philadelphia.
They're on the road.
Yes.
Just so we know, the Philadelphia Eagles are currently allowing the 8th most points in fantasy to signal callers, to the quarterbacks. So you feel pretty good about that. With Larry Fitzgerald and this offensive weapons, they've got John Brown back. They've got their guys. I'm thinking overall, Phillies gave up 5 passing touchdowns in the last 2 weeks overall. I feel pretty good about Carson Palmer this week. The guy I'm seeing him matchup comparison-wise with is Jay Cutler, and I know you were crushing on Jay Cutler a little bit.
Maybe just a little bit.
It's crushing on Jay Cutler because of the matchup. But I do feel, this is one of those where if you're in a 16-team league, I'm starting Carson Palmer. If you're in a 12-team league, I'm probably finding somebody better. But if you're in a deep league, you're probably starting Carson this week. It's not a bad matchup for him because of those numbers I had. Carson's
a lock in a 16-team league. I think he's fringe 12-team league. I think he's fringe 10-team league. And here's where I'm going to take your stat one step further, because it was what I was going to bring up, that Philadelphia does give up some of the most points to a quarterback on a weekly basis. Now, the one good thing here is Philadelphia is, what are they really good at? The run defense. Well, guess what? The Cardinals don't run the ball well because they don't have David Johnson. But Philadelphia also has given up the 4th most points to wide receivers on a weekly basis here throughout the year. That bodes well for Carson Palmer if he can get the ball out to Larry Fitzgerald, to J.J. Nelson, to John Brown, to everybody involved, if he can spread the ball around. And there are the offensive line problems. I know we joked about them at the top, but this matchup top to bottom for quarterbacks and wide receivers I think are good for the Cardinals. I'm starting Carson Palmer this week.
All right. I'm starting him too. I feel pretty good about it.
I didn't think I was going to say that entering the week. But again, matchup. The matchup's important.
Exactly. All right. The next one we're looking at is Jameis Winston, another quarterback. Thursday night football, I'm always wary of starting people, but the numbers don't lie.
Do you want me to do this?
Yeah.
Let's
just take the camera straight to Chris, and he's going to tell you why you're starting Jameis Winston, or any quarterback that's playing New England for that matter.
So if you'll remember, on the Sunday show, Picking with Pancakes, I kind of broke this down, how bad New England's defense is in terms of fantasy points. Well, we have a whole new week's worth of numbers to kind of compile here. They're still giving up the most points to quarterbacks. They're giving up the 2nd most points to running backs. They're giving up the 3rd most points to wide receivers.
Is that good, Chris?
It's not. It's not good. And get this, last week they were 6th against the tight end. This week they bumped up to 5th against the tight end against a Carolina team that didn't have Greg Olsen.
How does that even happen?
Exactly. This New England defense is very bad, and I agree with you that Thursday night is not a great matchup. But you know what? Short week. Less preparation. Can New England make enough changes in that amount of time? I don't think so. Jameis Winston is a start. 10-team, 12-team, 16 league, he's a start this week.
At some point, we just need to start having the conversation. I know it's New England, but we're 4 weeks into the season, and if they have another bad week, defensively, they just schematically...
This is a trend now. It's not just an outlier.
Exactly.
It is a trend.
And at some point, you have to have that conversation that maybe they just don't have the talent. At some point, you just got to realize that they have let a lot of these pass rushers, Chandler Jones, I think of some of these guys.
Jamie Collins, they traded him away. And how much would they use him right now because they don't have Dante Hightower?
They don't have anybody that can get after the quarterback.
Yep.
And that's a huge issue for this defense. So if you have a quarterback, or any position player for that matter, that's playing against this defense, you feel pretty good about it. I've gotten a lot of questions about Doug Martin, and we'll get into that in the Periscope because we're not going to talk specifically about Doug Martin.
Tough situation, I think.
But we'll talk about that on the Periscope after the show. That's a little tease for you.
That's good.
Bilal Powell, next up on our list. Start or sit here, Chris. Powell finally had a week that everybody's been waiting for. He has 190 total yards and a touchdown in week 4. This is a cupcake matchup against the Cleveland Browns, who have trouble defending the running back who could catch the ball out of the backfield. I am starting Bilal Powell this week. I know we've blasted the New York Jets, but they have the same record as the New England Patriots.
They do.
So I'm going to stop. I'm going to stop.
Yeah,
I'm going to stop blasting the New York Jets.
And they could very easily be 3-2 at the end of this week. This is not the best matchup, quote unquote, when you look at some of the numbers in terms of running backs and what their production is against teams. Cleveland, middle of the road in how many points they give up per week. So you have to ask yourself this question: do you believe the New York Jets can have 2 weeks like that where they play that well offensively? Will Bilal Powell get another opportunity where the team just doesn't touch him while he's down and he can get up and run for 75 yards? I don't think that will be the case, and I live by my motto: never play a New York Jet in fantasy football this year. So Bilal Powell, I think everyone's going to try to hop on board the hype train because of that big touchdown run. I still think the Jets' offense is a little bit out of whack. They don't have a lot of pieces there. I'm sitting Bilal Powell. Sitting him down.
See, in a 16-team league, Bilal Powell, to me, he's not an RB1, but he's for sure an RB2. You got to start this guy because he's getting the #1 touches, 120%. There's nobody else getting the touches away from him. Matt Forte hasn't been involved in the offense, and he doesn't need to have 190 yards. If he has 90 yards and a touchdown, you feel good. If he has 90 yards in general, that's 9 fantasy points. You feel good in an RB2 spot.
I agree.
So I think, yes, when we say start and sit, it depends on, is he your RB1? Probably not. But I'm starting him in an RB2 spot.
Sure, and again, it's very situational dependent. It depends on what other running backs you have that you're debating between.
For sure.
If Bilal Powell is your best option, then you're obviously going to play him.
Yep.
But I think you need to take a good look at your roster because I think there are some better matchups this week. One matchup that I don't think is better is this next one that we're going to talk about.
All right, next up, Wendell Smallwood.
Yep. There he is.
He has made the most of his increased playing time after Darren Sproles' injury. He has 34 yards and 45 receiving yards and a touchdown in Week 4. The Cardinals, though, are pretty tough against the run.
That's the problem.
But they allow 5 receptions per game to running backs, so they do allow for those Darren Sproles-esque type of running backs to be able to catch the ball in the backfield. That is what they're trying to make happen with Wendell Smallwood. Chris, I'll let you go first, but I know the way you're leaning.
Yeah, I mean, the Cardinals are really good against the running back. They give up the 4th least amount of fantasy points. There are only 3 teams that give the lower amount of fantasy points to running backs than the Cardinals: the Texans, the Vikings, and the Broncos. What do those teams have in common? They got pretty good defenses. The Cardinals have a pretty good run defense. Now, they may not have Robert Kimdichie this week, and he's a good run stuffer, so that may change my attitude on this a little bit. But the thing that bothers me about this matchup for Smallwood is LeGarrette Blount finally had a good game in Philadelphia.
Yes.
He finally broke through and had over 100 yards and was the guy that Philadelphia expected when they signed him. So I wonder if he gets a little bit more carries, and that limits the amount of touches, it limits the amount of targets that Wendell Smallwood has. So I think Smallwood you have as a running back 2 or a flex, but you really need to make sure that you don't have any other good options on your roster because Smallwood, I think the touches may go down because LeGarrette Blount had such a good game.
Absolutely. I'm in total agreement with Chris here. I think Wendell Smallwood is a guy that you're feeling okay in a flex position, but as a starting RB1, definitely not. In an RB2, I would still be hesitant to start him in that position just because of what the Cardinals have done, and what LeGarrette Blount's doing. That was his first good week that we've seen, and that's what they brought him in to be. That's what the Eagles were envisioning for him. I think it will be an interesting matchup. I think I'm okay putting him in a flex spot, but that's the only way that I'm starting him this week. The next up on our list is Amari Cooper, and he is...
Oh, Amari. You might get me look bad, buddy.
All right. He is now having E.J. Manuel throwing him the ball. So let's start there.
There's so many issues. Okay, I'm sorry. I don't mean to interrupt, but there are so many issues with this matchup this week, it's not even funny.
Okay, so Derek Carr's not playing.
So E.J. Manuel's throwing him the football. Okay. Problem number 1. Problem number 2, Amari Cooper doesn't know how to catch the football anymore.
Big issue.
And number 3, the Baltimore Ravens are one of the best fantasy defenses against wide receivers.
This is all very true.
So what do you get when you stir all that together and you stir it in a pot?
Stir it up, Chris.
Sit Amari Cooper. There, I said it. Sit Amari Cooper. I don't care where you drafted him. Sit him down.
The issue here with Derek Carr going out is it immediately downgrades everybody on Oakland's offensive unit. 120%.
Oh, and they're getting Michael Crabtree back this week.
Yeah, Michael Crabtree is the better wide receiver here over Amari Cooper.
So far.
Marshawn Lynch is a guy that I don't feel confident starting. This overall offense takes a big hit backwards because E.J. Manuel is not Derek Carr. So you can't feel confident starting these guys. And Amari Cooper struggled even with Derek Carr in the ball. So like Chris said, this is a big, fat sit for me. I am not starting Amari Cooper. No way. Absolutely not. You cannot start him. There are way, way, way better options here for you. Now, the next guy we're going to get into is it's like fetch. Okay, I'm going to use a Mean Girls. Okay.
I'm all for every mean.
Stop trying to make fetch happen.
Okay.
Stop trying to make Martellus Bennett a thing.
Okay.
I looked this up before the game started.
But look
before
at him.
Before the show started.
But
that's great. He looks like he's pointing out which guy he's going to block.
Yeah, he's like, I got that guy.
Blocking.
I got that guy.
He's really good at blocking because Green Bay's offensive unit is so just battered. They have terrible injuries. Their offensive line is not where it needs to be. They have Ty Montgomery out. They have Devontae Adams might not play. Randall Cobb. I mean, they're dealing with a lot of injuries. And you would think, okay, that means the tight end's going to get a lot of the balls.
Nope.
Wrong. That means that he is being used as a blocker almost all of the snaps that he is out there for. And I just read a piece that was written in the middle of June, and it was about how he was going to be the sneaky top-tier tight end this year.
Sneaky.
Stop trying to make Martellus Bennett a thing. If you were in a 12-team league, I saw going into this, CBS had him as the 10th overall guy. over Charles Clay, who continues to score well, Jason Witten, who continues to score well, Cameron Brate, all those guys, Kyle Rudolph. I like all those guys ahead of Martellus Bennett each and every week because he hasn't shown you that he's going to be that guy. We got to stop falling in love with what happened last year. Yeah, I
don't know what his role is in the Green Bay offense yet.
No,
besides being a blocker, what is he doing for them right now? And again, Dallas's defense is not the best. It's not the worst against the tight ends, but it's somewhere in the middle, and it's closer to being one of the better ones. So not a great matchup for him. Until Aaron Rodgers uses him more and throws the ball his way more and he gets more targets, I just don't feel comfortable putting him in there. And you mentioned a guy that I've thought has played really well lately. Charles Clay is a huge fantasy tight end target. I think O.J. Howard, who just caught a touchdown over the weekend, might emerge as somebody. Cameron Brate is involved in that offense. There are much better options that I know are available right now in ESPN, Yahoo, wherever you play fantasy. These players are available.
Yes, they are.
And Martellus Bennett is a guy that is taking up a roster spot. He's taking up a roster spot for you right now. He is a sit for me this week.
Yeah, Martellus Bennett is a sit until otherwise noted. He was on notice. Now he's been pushed aside from being on notice. He's now in the do not start part of our list of how we deal with players. But Chris, we've gotten through all the start and sit. Okay. So now we got to do a couple of questions.
We got a ton of Periscope questions right now.
Oh, we do.
Yeah. So when you're done with Twitter, we got some Periscope questions.
Oh, go ahead. Give us the Periscope questions.
So we got a couple of Periscope questions. So we got 3 wide receivers. We got to pick 2 of them to start. Okay. This comes from @Raiders123. Diggs,
shocker.
Fuller, or Landry. It is a full PPR league. You can take 2 of them. I know which 2 I'm taking.
Go ahead.
I would probably take Stefon Diggs and Will Fuller.
Stefon Diggs and Will Fuller. Who was the last one? Jarvis
Landry.
Yeah, I'm going with Chris. Same thing. Hey, Periscope, we'll wave down to you.
Yes.
They're in the camera.
Yeah,
you guys can't see. It's below us.
Yeah.
We got the phone rocking. But yeah, I'm 100% playing Stefon Diggs, and I like Will Fuller. I like what he's been able to do last week, coming back, and I think he's going to be a huge part of that offense. So I'm in the same boat.
Landry's not. I mean, this is a good problem to have because I think Landry's going to have a good game. I talked about Jay Cutler a little bit earlier.
You have a lot of good wide receivers there.
It's good options. You just have to ask. I mean, the Case Keenum factor plays in there as well, so I don't think you can go wrong either way, but I think just Diggs is the higher ceiling, and Fuller is going to be involved in that offense against Kansas City. Marcus Peters takes away Hopkins. That opens the opportunity for Will Fuller. I got another one for you.
Okay.
This comes from @BoltBlaster18. Do I trade Elliott or Hunt to get Antonio Brown? The answer is no. I have Antonio Brown. If you offered me Ezekiel Elliott or Kareem Hunt, I would absolutely on the spot say yes.
I'm perplexed by this question.
Do not do that.
No. This is a big fat no.
You can get Antonio Brown by not giving up those
Here's the thing you got to understand. Running backs are a hot commodity.
Yes, it's tough to get those
You
guys.
cannot get rid of. If you have Kareem Hunt and Ezekiel Elliott,
that's the other thing.
Do not get rid of either one of those guys, and I would love to be in your league because I cannot believe you have both of those guys.
If you're going to, if you have both of those guys and you want to trade one of them, you need to get an Antonio Brown plus
something else.
It's plus something else.
There probably be 3 guys. You should be. If you have 2 top-tier running backs, you're getting more than Antonio Brown. Antonio Brown hasn't even been the featured. He's not even the guy that's getting the ball the most in the end zone.
Yeah, he's throwing water coolers around. He's throwing Gatorade coolers around. Okay.
Sorry, but I'm definitely not trading. What about Antonio Brown thus far has made you think you should get rid of the? Here's a stat about Kareem Hunt.
Okay, go ahead.
On Monday Night Football, he could have not rushed for 1 yard. He could have rushed for 0 yards.
He didn't, by the way.
And he still would have been the #1 overall rushing back in football. So no, you're not trading Kareem Hunt, and no, you're not trading Ezekiel Elliott for Antonio Brown. You never trade hot commodity running backs, especially 2 of them, for one guy who's been struggling this far. I love Antonio Brown, but come on.
All right, that's it for the Periscope questions.
We got to be more realistic there.
So you can go ahead and shoot your Twitter questions.
All right, here's what I got here for you. All right. As we alluded to earlier, we talked a little bit about Carson Palmer, and you like Jay Cutler, so I'm putting you on the spot.
Okay.
Carson Palmer at Philadelphia or Jay Cutler versus Tennessee?
Jay Cutler versus Tennessee.
Okay.
Tennessee is so far this year one of the worst defenses in football against quarterbacks. Did anyone notice what Deshaun Watson did last week? I don't want to take away from Deshaun Watson, but 5 touchdowns, 5 total touchdowns for Deshaun Watson against this Tennessee defense, a Tennessee team that may or may not have Marcus Mariota. I like Jay Cutler this week.
So you like Jay Cutler?
I'm all over Jay Cutler this week. I'll be that guy. Wow. I will live and die by the Jay Cutler sword. I'll do it this week.
That's usually me.
That's
I
you.
feel like I'm always defending Jay, and
it'll be me this week. I'll take on that responsibility.
He's had 2 pretty bad weeks, but I think you're in good hands either way, whichever way you start this week. I think if you are in a league where you're looking for more higher upside, I think the higher upside here is Jay Cutler this week. But I think the more steady Eddie, the guy that you have a better opportunity of getting, 12 to 15 points and feeling pretty confident, is Carson Palmer. So you make that decision for yourself. If you're in a league where you're pretty tight on points and you're like, okay, I need to make sure that I have a guarantee, I would lean towards Carson. But if you're like, all right, I know that the projections are I'm going to lose by 20 and you need a higher upside, I would go with Jay Cutler this week, Chris.
We got another Periscope question.
Okay,
I'm going to sneak one in here. Frank Gore or Lamar Miller? I think we all know where I'm going to stand. Yeah, that's an easy answer. Lamar Miller.
Miller, Periscope, Lamar Miller.
Did we not go over this on Sunday? I thought we went over this on Sunday. This is why everyone needs to watch the Sunday show. I went over this. In depth. I said this is a volume play, and what does Lamar Miller do? He goes off.
Okay. Volume play, younger running back, better offense, better football team. Like literally every category that you look at a player. Better offensive line. Every category that you look at an individual player by, Lamar Miller checks that box.
Yep, so Lamar Miller.
So let's get rid of freezer burn Frank Gore. All right, let's move him on over. Let's move him off the table, and we're starting Lamar Miller this week.
Okay, back to Twitter.
Back to Twitter questions? All right, in a PPR league, we have, this one comes from GDubs31 on Twitter, and he wants to know in a PPR league, Joe Mixon or Doug Martin, who's coming back off a suspension this week, hashtag fantasy football. This is a tough one for me. This is a tough one.
Can I choose neither? Is that a legitimate option I can
No, that is not a legitimate option.
You're going to make me pick one?
Yeah.
Oh, Doug Martin is so bad. That Tampa Bay running game. Joe Mixon. Joe Mixon, because the Tampa Bay running game is so bad.
And because they play on Thursday night.
And because they play on Thursday night. And I never play fantasy players on Thursday night because it hinders your ability to do anything during the rest of the week.
Yeah. You feel, listen,
Joe Mixon.
Here's the thing with Doug Martin. We got another question about him coming up, too. I think people are in love with the idea of what can happen, which is fantasy football in and of an essence. You always are like, okay, well, this guy's coming back and he could be a stud. He could also not be involved in the play calling at all because he hasn't played football in 3 weeks. So let's pump the brakes on the Doug Martin train. Let's play the guys that we know have been playing football. And if you have them on your team already, just be in wait-and-see mode. This is the next question. This comes from Scott on Twitter. This is probably the last one we'll get into. His bye-week RB2 options are DeMarco Murray and Doug Martin. We got to put the camera on Chris as the live reaction here because this is the reaction.
Why did you ask that question?
Yeah,
DeMarco Murray.
Yeah, dude, come on.
If they don't have Marcus Mariota, they're going to run the football, and DeMarco Murray is still the featured back there. They're not ready to give it up to Derrick Henry just yet. DeMarco Murray has the ability to break off those big runs. And Miami's defense hasn't been anything inspiring so far either.
No,
so
absolutely not.
DeMarco Murray is the easy answer here.
Scott, I think that was an easy one for us. That's DeMarco Murray, unless you weren't paying attention. But Chris, we're to the end of the show. We got a lot of questions to get into. We'll hang out with Periscope after the show. We're going to get into a little quarterback draft. So that's a tease for you guys watching on live stream. If you want to find us at FanRag NFL is where we're having this Periscope. So you can go find that after you're done watching this. But
quarterback
Chris,
draft.
Any party thoughts here?
We're finally starting to see some trends develop.
Yes,
I think this is now the time where if you have a guy that's not performing, this is where you jump off the bandwagon. Yeah. This is where you can then be like, okay, I now need to reevaluate. And this is where if you've started the year 1-3 or 0-4, and in 2 of my leagues I've done that, I'm starting to reevaluate for next year because in both of those leagues I can accumulate stuff for next season. It's a Dynasty Keepers League, so I'm starting to do that. So
love it.
We may, you know what? I don't think we give the Dynasty Keepers Leagues enough love. So I may start doing that a little bit more.
Okay.
Shout out to the Dynasty Keepers League.
Chris is going to make this show all about his Dynasty team. That's pretty much what I just heard.
Yep.
So
that's what we've learned today.
That's what we've learned on today's show. But Chris, how can everybody follow you on Twitter?
At Chris R. Schubert is where you can find me on Twitter.
You can find him. You can send all your angry tweets about Dynasty leagues and how you hate them and how they're stupid.
I hate them too, so please, we'll
you can send all your nice, happy fantasy football tweets, or come find me at the next Diamondbacks divisional series game because they face off against the Dodgers. I'll be there on Monday night, and people were asking fantasy football questions, which was awesome because I love baseball and I love fantasy football, and they don't need to be separate.
No,
we can talk about football at baseball, and we can talk about baseball when we're at football. So you can follow me at @the_sports page with an I. But for Chris Schubert, I'm Paige DeMacos. This has been The Keepers. Good luck, guys.